That is
Yeah.
the hard part of being a breeder, those
Oh,
hard choices.
so hard. Yeah, it really is hard. We put literally blood, sweat, and tears into these mamas and puppies. And
Hey guys, Kat here from Standing Stone Kennels, and welcome to our Standing Stone podcast. If you've been following along with our podcasting journey, you'll know that we had our original podcast, You Ask, We Answer, Yawa, and from there we've kind of changed gears and we've started to interview some guests. Ethan and I have had some more conversations together about anything that kind of strikes our fancy that we want to share with people, and it's a great opportunity to introduce you to other people that we feel have a lot of great information to share. So if you are following along with us, you may know we also have a YouTube channel as well as Instagram, Facebook pages. We have a website that also includes an online store, standingstonesupply.com. And that is where we use and recommend all of our training gear, and we have it available for you guys. So none of the junk that you don't need, everything that we use and have tested. As well as if you need additional help with dog training, we have our online dog training community on Patreon to follow along with. If you have questions, we can answer those as well as help you train your puppy from home. And that's patreon.com/standingstonekennels. But today, I want to introduce you to Whitney Miller. Her and her husband, Josh, own Riverstone Kennels, and they have a very successful British Lab breeding program, as well as a training program. And I believe they train other dogs than just British Labs, kind of like we do here at Standing Stone. We don't just breed and train Shorthairs. We train all breeds. So Whitney has incredible experience with whelping and raising puppies, and she loves to share that education information to her following. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity to have a conversation with her today about that process. We actually got a puppy from them, Sprig, and did an entire training video series on our YouTube channel. And you can watch his entire playlist. He was such a sweet puppy. He was so well-mannered with the boys and easy to train. So definitely they know what they're doing when it comes to puppies. So I want to talk to her today. But before we get into some more of the main topics, why don't you take a chance here and introduce yourself, Whitney?
yeah, thanks, Kat. I'm really excited to talk about puppies. We are in puppy season galore right now, so it's perfect timing. And it'll be great. I mean, we're going to cover a lot of details here, I think, and it's it's a topic that not a lot of people know the surface of the topic, but they don't really dig deep into the topic. And I think it's going to be interesting for people to kind of hear about your and I experiences and how we raise these puppies and how we take care of all of our mamas. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
Awesome. And you guys have an Instagram channel or page,
We
excuse me.
do.
And I know I watch your stories all the time, checking in on how
Mhm.
you guys are doing your puppy stuff. And I see a lot of similarities between what you guys
Yeah.
do and what we do. So it'll be a
Mhm.
really great conversation. I'm
Yeah.
hoping to learn some new things as well, because I feel like you can't ever know it all, no matter how many
Oh,
puppies you've raised. So
totally
we're
agree.
always learning new things.
Oh,
So.
yes.
So how did you guys get into breeding to begin with? Were you guys
Yeah.
first just training and then breeding, or how did that kind of come around?
Yeah, so we started Riverstone Kennels back in 2011 and we trained gun dogs and obedience. And when I say we, I mean Josh. I did not do any of it. I actually worked as an interior designer. So this is like way out of left field of what I'm doing compared to what I went to school for. But Josh basically started Riverstone. It really took off. I didn't expect it to take off like it did, but Josh has just a great way of being able to communicate with dogs. And all of a sudden, these breeders were starting to send their dogs to us for training, and it just kind of blew up. It was amazing. And then this one breeder, so they have been breeding British Labs for about 30 years. They started to refer all their clients to us for training, and it kind of became time for them to think about retirement. And that's kind of where I put interior design on the back burner. I love dogs. I grew up with dogs. I love the whole aspect of being able to help your clients kind of change their life with their dog. You know, they have now an obedient dog, a great hunting dog, and now we are able to take another step and start that experience with our clients through these puppies. And so that's kind of where I came in. I probably started helping whelp litters back in 2014. And so I did that for 4 years before we actually took over that British Lab breeding program.
Awesome. That's a lot of experience, 4 years of basically getting mentored and, being involved with the whelping process before jumping in and feeling confident and comfortable enough to do it on your guys' own. Because when it goes right, it's great and simple and easy, but whelping litters doesn't always go right. Labor doesn't always progress the same way for every female. I mean, I'm sure my labor and delivery was completely different than your labor and delivery for children as well. And it's the same with female dogs. Some, are very quick through their labor. Some are longer. And knowing when there's the potential for it turning from a normal labor and delivery to a stressful situation that needs, some intervention, if you will, that it takes time to determine and to learn and to make sure that the puppies and the mamas are safe. So 4 years.
Gosh. Yeah.
4 years is an awesome amount of time to gain that experience. And now since that, I'm trying to do math in my head. That was 2014. And then for about 4 years, you were kind of learning the ropes. And so since 2018 till now, you guys have been full-time breeding for yourselves on your own with just you and maybe Josh helping out a little bit, but it kind of seems like you're kind of the person that I see in most of those videos. So
yeah, it's been really nice. So as you know, working with your husband, it's not always easy, but you kind of start to understand like, okay, here's my side of the business and here's his side of the business. And then you start to get these really cool ways of being able to mingle each of your businesses together to just create that much better of an experience and that much better of a business. And so it took a little while because, Josh is so passionate about the dogs and the sires and all of our dams. And I think he realized that it was my side of the business when it came to the whelping and all the puppy care, because he loves the adult dogs, but he does not have the detailed personality to be able to care for mama and puppies. So,
and
typical man.
That's really interesting because honestly, it's fairly similar to Ethan and my experience. And we actually just did an episode that's going out this week, which depending on when this episode comes out, because, you pre-record these things, on working with your spouse and the different roles that you play and how those can come together to, complement and also like the struggles of working with your spouse sometimes. So really an interesting kind of comparison with what you guys have going on. I know that I kind of take that role with our puppies. Ethan and I kind of plan and work together to plan our litters and, which females are going to be bred to which males, looking at pedigrees, things like that. But then when it comes time to communicate with clients and raise and whelp those puppies, that kind of falls to me. So, and Ethan has been involved with some of that. But it definitely, I kind of lean more towards that. And then he leans more towards other things in our business. So, when you guys started breeding and you kind of took this big step to doing it on your own, what was your guys' first steps to be prepared to take on this role as breeders?
Yeah, honestly, it was really interesting. So those 4 years that I was learning before taking over the business, I would literally I whelped out every single litter. Jan would either be with me or she would be in the house or she would not even be there. And then I actually raised litters at our kennel for her. So, I basically felt like by the time we signed those papers when we bought the business that I was very, very prepared on a hands-on standpoint, from picking the mamas, how to import our sires and dams, how to place the puppies, how to communicate with clients. What I was not prepared for was actually all the paperwork that you have to do for the litters. I had no idea that there was so much communication and so much paperwork that had to be done. And of course, sometimes I feel like you and I are way big overachievers. Like we want to do everything to the max. And I think sometimes I'm like, gosh, I think I just complicate it for myself. But at the end of the day, it's the best experience I can give our clients. So I would say with all the hands-on whelping, the raising the puppies, all of that, I had it down to a T when we bought the business. It's just the paperwork that I had to understand how to go about making sure that I can take care of my puppies during the day, my mama's during the day, and then when do I have time for paperwork? Because of course, as you know, it's you have to be hands-on with these puppies. I mean, almost 24/7 because if something happens, it can go downhill really, really fast. And so it was trying to figure out that balance of hands-on and paperwork.
And sometimes, you may have times where you don't have litters. So that's when you're doing all your like paperwork prep work, or after litters go home, finalizing paperwork, records, things like that. So you kind of have to get into a flow of when there's puppies, this is what my priorities are. When I have a lull from puppies, which you can't 100% have like that schedule planned out. You have an idea, but heat cycles, shift here and there a little bit. And, that ends up making a complete, like, this is the exact dates that I can expect things to happen, to be a little bit flexible. But that's where you try and get into that flow of what I do in preparation for puppies to hit ground and what I do after those puppies have gone home to their new families to kind of, and sometimes you have overlapping litters. I know we do sometimes, and I know you do for sure. That's why like scheduling this podcast was actually like around puppies and litters to make it work. So
yeah, for sure. I always tell people, I'm like, Mother Nature runs our business just because, like you said, you can kind of plan it, but heat cycles can be all across the board, no matter where they are. And of course, a lot of people don't want to breed their female during hunting season. And so then it's like, you have to plan around that. And then my one time I will never whelp out a litter is over Christmas, because I will never take a Christmas away from my kids for whelping out a litter. Otherwise, I'm totally wide open. But like you said, it's hard to plan.
It is. It's hard to plan, as well as you can't plan how many puppies you're going to have, how many males, how many females, what the coloration is. I mean, if it was that easy to just have everything automatic, it would make our lives easier for sure. But it doesn't work that way.
No, not at all.
Being prepared for these litters, especially when you've got multiple litters coming up, things like that, what are the steps that you usually go through to be prepared for litters, things that you have on hand, what you do in preparation, caring for your mamas, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I'll start with caring for our mamas because it's kind of different than what some people do. So we only own one of our mamas, Miss Purdy, and all of the other females are owned by our clients that we have breeding contracts with. It's an amazing way to do it because we don't have to house a whole bunch of females. They're in their homes with their families. They have a life, and then they just come back to me for breeding. They go home during their pregnancies. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to keep them during their pregnancies, which I kind of like going through that phase with those mamas. You get such a different bond with those mamas that is really so strong. And it's a good experience for me to go through every once in a while just to keep my brain fresh on what to kind of prep my clients for if they do have their mamas back home. When they lose their appetite, what do you do? How do you know when they're starting to look pregnant? What are pregnancy signs and all of that? So having the mamas, I either have them here or I don't, and then they come back to me 1 week before they're due, and then I schedule their puppy count x-rays. And as you know, those are so important because we need to know how many puppies are going to be born in each litter. Because, if a female stops contracting or if something's kind of wonky and you're not sure what's going on, you at least have in your mind, okay, I have this many puppies left, or I think she's done. Maybe she has a bonus puppy in there. Who knows? But having as much information before that litter arrives is so important. So I would say my first thing that I do is I always schedule those vet appointments because vets nowadays are booked out like crazy.
Oh, it's very difficult. It's nice to have a relationship with a vet that is understanding of, sometimes things come up and I'm like, I need to get in kind of like now, but it's not necessarily an emergency and they're pretty reasonable to work with. So speaking of the puppy x-rays, that's something that I want to talk to you about because we used to do puppy x-rays pretty consistently and they just were so inaccurate for us where we would get...
Okay.
So I had a litter of puppies. I had 2 litters that were due like within a couple days of each other. So I took both mamas in for x-rays. One x-ray, they're like, I think I see 5 puppies. And in the other x-ray, they thought they saw 4. And I'm like, well, these mamas look pretty big because if you don't know, if people don't know that are listening to this, females are pregnant for 63 days, and we can usually do puppy x-rays as early as 55 days. Anything earlier than that, skeletal systems aren't fully calcified, and so you're not going to get a good x-ray. So we have done these x-rays in the past. And so one mama was supposed to have 5, one's supposed to have 4. Guess when they were born, the times that you wouldn't have been whelping them. At this time, we did not have children, so that is one thing. But one was born on Christmas Day. The next litter was born the day after Christmas. Yep. Very busy holiday for us. But one litter had 9 and the other had 10. I'm like, you were so off. Yes. Oh my gosh. It was.
How in the world?
Poor X-ray equipment.
Does that happen?
I don't know. Poor X-ray equipment and not like being able to, adjust contrast well enough and things like that. And I mean, when you have bigger litters, they're so packed in there that sometimes it's hard to get accurate puppy counts. So we've had similar experiences since then. Now, not all of them. And if you find that's with really good equipment, that's awesome. Unfortunately, like the closest vet for us that has excellent equipment is at Abilene, at Symbion. They're a reproductive specialist, and they do a lot of repro stuff with greyhounds, but that's where we've done some of our frozen breedings, collections, things like that. And we've gone there for some x-rays, and those are excellent x-rays. They are still usually off by one puppy, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what you've got going, as well as sometimes with those x-rays, it's also nice if you have a maybe small litter, but you have big puppies, it can prepare you. So those are things that those x-rays are helpful for. And Abilene has an awesome ultrasound that you can actually see like coloring of like the heart with the puppies that we've done before. We don't go there usually for our ultrasound confirmations just because it's a distance and, not wanting to put that on our mamas and stress them any more than we have to. But when we've had opportunities for that, it's like, wow, that's impressive ultrasound equipment. So
no kidding. That's amazing. I've never heard of that before, actually. So that is really neat. You guys are lucky to have that.
Yeah. And we don't do it all the time, but it is a cool visual and experience to be like, I can literally see the blood flowing through this little tiny puppy in here. It's kind of like an ultrasound for us, so much more detailed. So anyway, so you guys get puppy counts and x-rays with your mamas.
We do.
Then that's like in that week prior to whelp.
It is, yeah, because then, there's all these different symptoms that these mamas can show, whether it's nesting, they totally change their appetite. A lot of times they totally go off of their food like the day before. They may vomit, they have a loose stool, their temp drops, into the low 98s, high 97s. And so there's all these different things that I want to start to see in these mamas so I can prepare myself, make sure she's doing okay, make sure she's comfortable in the whelping pen before we really get going and get down to business with these puppies. So, and a lot of times they whelp at night. And so a lot of times we pull these 24-hour shifts. I know. You know what I've actually learned to do? So I've learned that when they start to show signs of labor, I totally darken the room, turn on some classical music, almost make it so I think it's night to try and offset them to be okay, I can go into labor. Because I feel like a lot of times if they don't go into labor during the day because there's so much commotion, activity, going on our walks and being fed and whatever the other mamas are doing. And so I feel like they just, if I can make them be as relaxed and focus on what their body is doing, I'm like, okay, maybe this will get you moving on labor a little bit faster.
Yeah. And not go, start at midnight and go all into the morning. So that's actually a great idea to be able to, mimic nighttime in a sense of darkening the room and calming the environment, things like that. And do you sit with your mamas through all those stages of labor and through the delivery process?
I do. I am actually a little psychotic about it because I'm you cannot physically tell them what they're going through. So the only way I can make them comfortable is by having me present for them to be okay, she's here, she's in the room, it's going to be okay. And so, oh my gosh, it was probably a month ago now because Breslin's puppies are going to be 4 weeks. Oh, actually they were 4 weeks yesterday. Okay. So she started this early signs of labor, on whatever day it was. And then it became night and I literally set my alarm for every 45 minutes to go off at night throughout the entire night from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. because I was like, I need to be there for her for when she starts to have these contractions. Now, even though it's her second litter, you still want to make sure that everything is going smooth and that she's in, we have like a whelping box. It's like a wooden box that I put in the middle of the room that I can have full circle, 360 circle around to help wherever she's going to be delivering the puppy. And then I have them in a separate like little puppy pen. And so I get them out of their puppy pen, get them in the whelping box, get them comfortable. So it's not just like all of a sudden they're having puppies. There's a lot of prep that goes into it, like what we were first talking about. But I am with them the entire time. And so what I've kind of found and calculated is that however many puppies I see on those puppy count x-rays is how many hours I plan for the whelping. And, those puppies could be born minutes apart or they could be born hours apart, but it almost always evens out to be, if there's an x-ray of 7 puppies, it almost always evens out to be 7 hours of whelping.
And that would be a really good rule of thumb that I have also mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
About an hour per puppy. I have had some mamas that are like shotgun puppy labor, like popping out 10 puppies in 3 hours is insane.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
It's almost stressful because you hardly have time to make sure that puppy 1 is, cleaned and breathing well and documented all the information about them. And puppy 2 is coming. It's like, oh my gosh, I wasn't ready for puppies to be born 3 minutes apart. So that was an extreme situation, but on average, it's about that, hour per puppy. But yeah, sometimes you can't 100% be prepared, but that's a good way to plan at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm always like, okay, Josh, like you have the kids, like this is how long you're in charge of this.
Yep.
And then you have little Ava. I don't know about your kiddos, but Ava loves sitting down and watching them whelping. And then she's like helping me weigh them and put the collars on. Like, do your little kiddos do they ever like sit in with you?
He hasn't been in for like the actual whelping process other than like watching 1 or 2 puppies. Yeah. He is, I think boys and girls are very different. He is so busy. All he wants to do is help with everything, but he's too active. And then mamas get a little more nervous. So I'm like, he can come see for a minute or 2, but then it's, give mama her space and you don't need to try and climb in the whelping box with her and all the things that he wants to do. And, but then after puppies are born, he loves like all the parts of raising the litter, petting the puppies, playing with the puppies. Most of it is him wanting them to chase him. But definitely he likes to pet them. He's tried to help do some supplementing, a few times, but
sure.
Yeah, they love it. And Cade, he just turned a year, so he's not quite to the point where he's involved, but I'm sure he'll be interested at least on some level at some point.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is fun when they come in and they're so excited about it. It almost brings a little bit of a different energy to the room, that they're just like, they're so interested in it and they're just so, well, Ava's very gentle with it, where if Colton was in the room, it would be like, oh my gosh, he would, like you said, he would be very much like a typical little boy in that room rather than Ava's like sitting there singing like Rockabye Baby
to the
little puppies.
Definitely not what Aiden would be doing.
Oh my gosh. But so yeah, it's really interesting. And it's like we said, you can always, I plan the hour per puppy and then we go from there. And sometimes it's 5 a.m. when we finish whelping and then we go about our day. We don't get to go to sleep. And I don't know about you, but I get really nervous about a mama laying on a puppy or just making sure that all the puppies are nursing correctly and that like everyone is safe. And so I am like watching my phone and my computer like a hawk because I have the Nest cameras over all my pens. And so it's almost like the whelping part's the easy part. For me, it's like the 3 days after that are the most stressful more than anything.
And so with our mamas too, like I've had some moms that are a little more relaxed mamas and they'll lay there really well and nurse really well. And then I've had some mamas that maybe get a little anxious. They hear one puppy crying that's scooted away from them a little bit. And that's the puppy that they're worried and concerned about. So then they get up and leave the rest of their puppies to go to that puppy. And then they're like trying to kind of nose that puppy over to the rest. And then they're trying to lay down. And then that's when I'm like that upping and downing and anxiousness. That's when I'm afraid a puppy will get, laid on. We actually remove our puppy whelping materials. So our bedding, because our moms get a bedding to nest in during that laboring. But for the first like 3 days, sometimes up to a week, depending on the size of the puppies and the litter size, I'll remove that bedding so mamas aren't still feeling the urge to nest and then burying puppies in the materials. So
yes. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, so what do you have down on your in your pens
so
then?
we have a whelping nest in our pens that's a heated little like
Okay,
lowered pan.
yep.
So it kind of keeps the puppies in that space. They can crawl out it if they want to, because, you know, puppies can't really regulate body temperature right away. So this allows them to be warm when they need to, crawl off of it if they need to. And mom usually circles right around that nest or tries to actually kind of lay on the edge of that nest with them. And when we can add bedding back in, we just have these whelping pads that are super absorbent that go right on top of it. And then our puppy pig rails hold that kind of in place. So.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. That I really like those nests. I don't have anything set up that I can actually put one of those on there right now, but those are really nice. Right now mine are just they just have the pressure sensitive heat pads in there. And then actually my mats that I have in there have grommets on them. So then I can just pin them to the side of our pen.
Yes.
And so if the mamas are nesting, they can still go through that nesting motion. But like you said, then they can't cover up a puppy and then accidentally lay on it.
Exactly. And our mamas still will do a little bit of the nesting, but they're just kind of digging at the surface of the whelping box. And until everyone is a little bit more mobile, those puppies are a little bit stronger. That's how we make sure that mama isn't going to squish anybody accidentally and that the puppies are as safe as possible. But yes, there's been sleepless nights where I will sleep next to the whelping box overnight with mamas just because I'm very light sleeper. So if I hear a little puppy squeak, I'm like immediately awake and I can check and count everybody and make sure that mama's okay, puppies are okay. But yes, I've definitely done that for some of the mamas in the past, especially first-time moms.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting working with the clients because they can, I let them have access to the Nest camera so they can watch the entire whelping and then they can check on their dog and then her puppies anytime. And the one question I get, the most common question I get is it normal for them to nest? And I think it's so interesting because, you know, it's something that I totally overlook because it's so normal to me, but I'm just like, those natural instincts that these dogs have to want to create a little nest for their puppies. I mean, even though they're in this room, they've been totally socialized. They're definitely living in homes. Like they still have these normal natural instincts like they do out in the wild to nest, you know, before their puppies are born and after. It's so interesting sometimes to take a step back and realize, wow, these are all these natural instincts that they have that they've now carried through into basically us humanizing them.
Yes, and them being completely domesticated. And so you mentioned that you stay with your mamas the whole time, and we do as well. That's one thing. So we've created some YouTube videos in the past, you know, showing the whelping process to help educate people. I know you're a big proponent of educating people and sharing that knowledge. So we've done that. And that's one of the comments that is very controversial on there that we get is just leave the mama alone. Just leave her be. They've done this for, you know, in the wild, dogs do this naturally. And I'm like, yeah, but first of all, those are undomesticated animals. Second of all of our dogs, our personal dogs, we don't quite have the situation that you guys do. So all of these dogs that are being bred are our personal dogs. We have done a few leased dam situations, kind of like what you're explaining, with a few select females, but mostly these are my family pets and my dogs. So they have a very strong bond with me, and me being present is that comfort that they need to know everything is going to be okay. This is a normal process. You know, I can pet them and soothe them when they need to. I can read what their body's doing and encourage them to keep pushing. Or if I notice, you know, we're kind of stalling in labor, I can be like, it's time to get up and walk around a little bit, you know, keep things moving. So I think, especially because these dogs are so important to us and to your families as well, that I would never want to leave them unattended to fend for themselves and whelp a litter without supervision, to make sure that not only mama's comfortable, but safe, because complications can happen. On puppies, you know, want to make sure that all of my puppies are as healthy as they can be. You know, I'm there to intervene when I can. But yeah, I could never leave my mamas alone to whelp a litter.
Yeah, no, I couldn't either. And like you said, there's definitely those complications that can go wrong. And Something as simple as a mama not understanding that you have to break that sack open right away to make sure that that puppy gets air. I mean, that mama, when you think about these bigger litters, they're exhausted by the time that they get to the end of the litter. And the last thing I want to do is make my mama do all that work by herself. And not to mention, those mamas, if they're eating all those placentas and all the sacks that, they could really get an upset stomach and have diarrhea and vomiting from that. And so the more that we can help them and still, I mean, obviously we're still letting them go through all those natural things like the nesting, but to be able to be there and just help them and encourage them and to walk them, I think it's a really important thing to do for these mamas. I mean, we go to hospitals when we have our babies, like what's the difference, and so just
I think of
being there
pushing
for
out
them.
one baby and then being done. Or, some people that maybe have twins or even triplets. But can you think of pushing out 9 babies in a row? Oh my goodness, I would be so exhausted and, just like drained from, the emotions and the stress. So it's like, I want to be there for them as much as possible, just like you do. And if a mama is struggling, I can recognize that. If a puppy needs a little extra supportive care to help break that sack and clear airways and, rub them vigorously, all the things that, you're like, okay, had I not been there, we could have lost this puppy or we could have lost mama. So definitely.
Totally. We just had a puppy stuck and I had to take her in for an emergency C-section and she was pregnant with 12. And so the vet said, because, and I couldn't actually feel if I was touching the head or the butt, but I could feel an arm and I had no idea. I'm like, I cannot figure out what I am feeling here besides a leg. And so I took her into the vet and they tried to get her out. And what they said was because she had such a big litter that those other puppies, this was puppy number 4 that was stuck. And because she had such a big litter, those other puppies were almost working as a suction to keep that puppy in so she couldn't push it out. And they're like, you would have never gotten that puppy out. And then you think, okay, so that was only puppy number 4. What happens to every other puppy after that? Then they become in danger when that other puppy is stuck. And so it's just like, you can be hands-on making sure that everyone is safe and sound. It's so important.
So what led you to believe that the puppy was stuck? Because I think that's a question that a lot of people have, especially if they're breeding or, whelping their first litter. They don't know what a natural, contracting, pushing progression would be, and recognize when it's not going as it needs to, and then need to go to the vet for help. And some people, I feel like, also make that decision to go to the vet almost too anxiously, and the mama could have probably progressed fine. So what do you look for? What are those signs that you say, this wasn't natural, this was not normal, and she needed help?
So usually, you can see how they're contracting. You can tell a very easy contraction versus a very hard contraction. And what I usually do is once I see those hard contractions going, and I notice that there is nothing that is going to be moving this puppy, that's when I'm like, okay, now I need to go and see how this puppy is inside of her. So I'm going to be inserting my fingers. I can actually feel how those Josh is knocking at the door. I can go in and physically feel that puppy. And so when it's head first, you can feel the mouth. You can actually feel when the sack is still around that puppy. If it's the butt first, you can feel the tail, or you can tell by how round that back end is. But I usually will let a mama kind of go an easy on and off contraction for an hour. If she's kind of starting to get it into a good contracting, every couple minutes, then I'm like, okay, now we need to start going for a walk. For an hour or 2, we need to start going for a walk. And I need to start trying to lube her up just to help that puppy get out. Once we're on hour 3, I'm like, now we need to get to the vet, because now we've been slowly working up to this contracting. We've went for multiple walks. I mean, there's literally been times where I've almost stood a mama on her head because I'm trying to push that puppy back down into the birth canal to try and flip it, just like they do in humans. They're like, okay, we need to flip that baby so it's coming out head first. I sometimes try and do that with the puppies too. But once we're on hour 3, I'm like, that's it. I can't do anymore. Josh has tried to help me. He can't do anymore. Now we need to go and possibly do a C-section. Sometimes we have to do a C-section and sometimes we don't. The one thing I actually really try not to do is give a mama oxytocin, just because Oxytocin can either help or it can hurt a little bit, because if she all of a sudden now she's contracting really hard and those puppies are stuck, now we can really be causing some issues for those other puppies that are behind the stuck ones. So you really honestly just have to read the mama. And I would say if you're on hour 2 and she's really, really bearing down, trying to push with those contractions, that's when you need to say, okay, now we need to go to the vet.
I've actually had some mamas where we've never had a C-section, knock on wood. So I'm going to hope for that to continue if at all possible. But also if mamas need it, we're definitely not going to bat an eye about going. But sometimes I'll have mamas that it seems like they're getting very uncomfortable while they're pushing, and you can see their body contracting, but they stop pushing. They're like, I'm just not going to push with this contraction. And that's when I have had those conversations. I'm like, if this continues where she won't push with the contraction, because for whatever reason, she feels uncomfortable with it, even if it's not puppy 1 being born, it's puppy 3. That's when we're like, okay, we'll go through another round of contraction, see if we can encourage some good pushing. And if I can't get her to finish contracting and pushing, we'll end up saying, okay, what's the next step? And that's when I will also help try and manipulate the puppy, insert some fingers, try and reposition puppy. I definitely don't want to pull or dislocate anything on that puppy, but trying to just reposition it a little bit, getting her up, walking her around. And usually that is enough to allow the progression to continue to happen. Like I said, we've never had a C-section. But I will say, and this is the hard truth about breeding, like not every puppy lives, even though we do what we can to prevent, misfortune from happening and taking care of the mamas and reading the situation. Fortunately, things do happen where a puppy is born still or a puppy isn't born healthy. And that's not necessarily a genetic condition. That could be a congenital condition, something that happened in utero through the development process, something just didn't line up right. And so we try within reason to support that puppy through supplementing, sub-Q fluids, NutriCal, even sometimes antibiotics. And definitely depending on where that puppy is in, the stage of their development, what we can do is sometimes limited. But at some point, we sometimes have to make the decision that this supportive care isn't enough. And because there could be an underlying reason and condition for that, it's not necessarily the humane thing to drag this out, that this puppy is fading for a reason, and it isn't going to have a quality of life that we want for our puppies and definitely for puppy owners. And if a puppy's not healthy, it's definitely not going to be sold. And there's definitely different levels of quality of life. We learned the hard way with a puppy once that had a cleft palate, and we didn't recognize what was going on at first. The puppy was super struggling to latch, was always so gurgly, and we were doing all this supplementing, but they just couldn't seem to latch real well. And finally found out that it had a cleft. Well, this was after like 3 weeks of supplementing and bottle feeding this puppy that we're like,
wow,
because we were able to get enough of a latch on a bottle, but not on mama, and he wasn't gaining weight like the rest of the puppies. And this was very early on in our breeding career, if you will. And so we finally were like, let's check for this. This wasn't something we'd run into before. And we looked, and he did have a cleft, and we did a ton of research at that point. Like, what are our options? There's a lot of foundations for cleft palate puppies, but through the research, we found there are a lot of other things in their bodies that are developing at the same time as that palate. And that can be cardiac systems. That's their eyes. So this puppy, we put in so much time and effort that I was like, I just can't, make that hard choice with this puppy. And so we ended up giving it away to Ethan's family, his parents, which then they had the expense of, a palate repair surgery, which at that point in time was an expense that we couldn't manage. So they decided to try that. And they repaired his palate to the best that it could be repaired. But unfortunately, he died of a stroke at 2, because that was something that he didn't have a fully developed cardiac system. There were other neurological issues that are all in the same sequence of development in utero with those puppies. So cleft palates aren't a genetic thing. It's just a development thing in utero. And so now, if unfortunately we would see a cleft palate puppy in the future, I probably would make a different decision just because, his family got super attached to that dog for a very short amount of time because of all the other underlying health conditions that he had that we weren't aware of at the time. So that is the hard part of being a breeder, those hard choices.
So hard. Yeah, it really is hard. We put literally blood, sweat, and tears into these mamas and puppies. And it really does. I mean, even if a puppy is stillborn, I mean, it just breaks your heart, because you're like, this should have been someone's best friend.
And you second guess yourself.
Could
have I done something different to make this puppy not a stillborn puppy? So.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, I always have to check myself because I'm like, it's amazing, like incredible to me how we can have all these healthy litters of puppies. I mean, when these mamas are having litters of 9, 10, even 8, I mean, even a litter of 4 is incredible when you think of how short that gestation is. I mean, it really, truly is incredible that they can have all these healthy litters with very minimal complications.
Yes, and that is a very short time window for development, which is why a lot of the development of those puppies finishes after they're born, from their eyes opening and their ears opening. They are born blind and they are born deaf. And to find mamas that incredible sense of smell that they have, it is a miracle, and it is very, I guess, powerful to think about, how much goes into those puppies in the womb, but then how much is still afterwards. Our babies aren't born blind, and they're not born, they can't see real well, but they're not born deaf. Yeah. So those puppies are, definitely in a stage of development, even after birth, that they are needing so much care. Which is something that I wanted to talk to you about, the stages of care that you guys do with your puppies after they're born. So you're very involved in the whelping process and, documenting all of their weights and times of birth and things like that. But what about those weeks after the puppies are born?
Oh my gosh. So usually I would say weeks 1 and 2 are pretty simple. It's just you have to be very aware of each puppy, and you have to be aware of what's going on with each puppy. So for the first week, I weigh them morning and night in grams because I want to see any fluctuation in weight gain or weight loss for these puppies. And it's going to help me know when mamas go from the colostrum to the milk, because I want to make sure that she is being able to give enough nutrients to each and every puppy. And usually the milk comes in, around day 2, maybe day 3, usually day 2. But I just really want to make sure that all these puppies are gaining weight properly, because, you have to keep the rooms so warm because they can't regulate their body temp. And so if a puppy's not getting enough nutrition, they can get dehydrated very easy because of how warm the room is. And so I weigh them morning and night because it just is a little peace of mind for myself, knowing if I'm going to bed that the puppies, their little bellies are full. And then week 2, I weigh them in the mornings only. And then I'm done at week 3, because then at week 3, they're fat and happy. Mama's doing great. And then I usually start them on mush at week 3. So it's a lot of hands-on, a lot of very detailed care with these puppies, just making sure that everyone is doing well and there was no unseen health issues at birth, and making sure mama's doing good, because mamas can get mastitis at any point in their nursing. A mastitis is caused by bacteria, and they can really pick it up at any time. And then once you get to week 3, then it's kind of like the fun starts, but then a lot of more work starts, because then that's when we put our puppies on the shavings. You have to do a lot of pen cleaning. You make the mush. I start them on kibble at 4 weeks, and then they're rambunctious and they need a whole lot of socialization and playtime once they get to that 4-week age. So there's all these little mini stages, but you still have to be very, very, very hands-on and detailed through each stage. So honestly, I would say my mamas are amazing from weeks 1 to 3, just by taking care of the puppies on their own, with obviously me overseeing and making sure that everyone is clean and healthy and eating.
Yeah, definitely. Even though, like you mentioned, the care that we typically have to have for those puppies in week 1 to 2 to into that third week is minimal. It's definitely not a set it and forget it process, because we do the same with those daily weigh-ins. And some puppies, depending on, if I have a puppy that's born considerably smaller than its litter mates, I am paying even more attention to that puppy, because it's going to struggle to compete for resources, those nipples and those teats and the milk from mama. So I need to make sure that it's getting every opportunity that I can give it to latch without being pushed off, and, kind of gain the ground that it didn't have to start out with, or I need to step in and supplement that puppy. And you mentioned like mastitis with your mamas. That's something that we monitor, checking teats over, making sure mama's clean as possible. They still go outside and they go potty and they roll in the grass. So you have to watch those things, as well as the potential of pyometra could be there. So we actually monitor our mama's temperatures. I take their temperature daily, until approximately 2 weeks. And then I watch for other signs, if their lack of appetite is there after they've been, their bodies are in full on milk production mode. They should be hungry all the time. So if I see any changes in their demeanor, that's a red flag. And that's when I go back into, okay, temperature checks and making sure that we didn't miss, mastitis. Because those things with the mastitis or pyometra, or even the health of those puppies, hours matter in this game. That's why, double daily weights is something that it's not an insane thing to do, really, because those puppies, 12 hours can change a lot for those puppies in those first week or so. So
yeah, absolutely.
We do those same things very similarly. Our mama's food increases crazy. Like that's something that people, I don't think, recognize the demand on mamas to produce enough milk to make these puppies, whether you got a 4 puppy litter or a 12 puppy litter, those demands are going to be different on your mama, but they are producing so much milk and nutrition for those puppies. So we, depending on litter size and mama's milk production and puppies, recorded weight gains, sometimes we'll start at 3 weeks for puppy mush, sometimes 4 weeks. It just really depends on those puppies' weight gains, because I don't want to stress their bodies out by starting puppy mush too early, because gut health is so particular with puppies. It's like, well, we're adding this new stuff, which is kibble that's mushed up to their systems, and they've never had to digest it before. And so, you deal with a little bit of puppy diarrhea for a little bit while their bodies are going, oh, I can process this properly. So the longer that we can hold off to that 4-week mark, if possible, I feel like their gut health is a little closer to ready to digest that puppy food. But then it's a process of, you need to get them eating well so that when they go home to their new owners, they're not going to be picky about eating kibble, and they're going to, continue gaining and developing like they need to with their new families.
Yes. My favorite thing is to send home fat, roly-poly, healthy puppies.
Yes.
So, I'm like, yep, your puppy is more than healthy. And I'm sure you guys do too, but by state, we have to have our puppies checked over by a certified veterinarian, before they go home. And so it's just that one little extra step that's a good peace of mind for myself and for our clients, being like, okay, I didn't go to school for vet, but I do know what a healthy puppy looks like. But someone that did go to school to be a veterinarian, they know those little extra things to look for, that they can look it over too. But there's nothing that you want more than that healthy puppy that knows how to digest that food, can eat that food properly, making sure their teeth are in correctly, making sure that their jaws line up correctly. I mean, there's so much that goes into it to making sure you're sending home those healthy puppies.
Definitely. And the other side, you were talking about state requirements. So in our state, we can't send puppies home before 8 weeks old either. I know that there are other states.
Ours is 7 weeks.
And there are some that are 7 weeks. There are some states, only like a couple, that don't have an actual regulation. But most are either 7 or 8 weeks. So when I hear about these people that get puppies that are, 5.5, 6 weeks old, and I think, oh my goodness, you shouldn't be having that puppy that early, because there's so much that they still continue to learn from the socialization with their litter mates, and learning how to eat properly, and just even the parts of like bladder control. You take a 5.5-week-old puppy home, a 6-week-old puppy, you're going to be struggling for a couple more weeks than the people that are taking home 8-week-old puppies, because 2 weeks in these puppies' development is a huge change. And you go from 8 weeks to 10 weeks, you see another huge change. So it makes a big difference what age those puppies go home at. And there are times where I'm like, man, our puppies are so bold and confident. And they are turning into like a little pack of piranhas right now at 7 weeks old. I would say, yes, they could go home at 7 weeks, but the state says, no, they will go home at 8 weeks. And I'm like, okay. So we keep them for, that 8th week until they go home, but they are rip roaring and ready to go at 7 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Yes, they are. I know. People will be like, well, are you sure they're ready to go home at 7 weeks? I'm like, why don't you come over and visit the litter, and then you be the judge of that?
Yes.
And they're like you said, they're running like 7 different directions. They're fat, roly-poly, happy, healthy, like independent little maniacs, really.
But then they get that pack mentality of you come to, pet them and they all swarm you with their sharp little needle teeth and they're just like in attack puppy mode. Whereas if you separate them off one at a time, it's a completely different story. So I'm like, at that point, 7 weeks or 8 weeks when we send them home, that's what they need. They need that individual one-on-one family time to start developing good puppy behaviors, not that pack puppy mentality of attack and bite everything. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that 7-8 week, I think that's really the sweet spot for sure. With both my puppies, the labs, and your puppies.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that, that's from our, sporting breeds, these bigger breeds. That's probably a different story if you're talking about, some of these mini breeds, smaller dogs. They might need, a little bit more time to grow and develop. I've never bred, a teacup chihuahua or something. So I definitely don't have that experience. I can't even imagine how tiny one of those puppies are when they're born.
Oh, I know. I think about that too, or there's those certain breeds that they even have to they can't deliver naturally.
So they have to have
the C-sections.
Yep.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I actually had someone reach out to me one time asking about breeding a smaller breed. And I just said, I cannot even tell you where to start. I'm like, I am not well versed in any of that. I'm like, you have to talk to your vet or someone that has done that, because I don't even feel comfortable telling you what I do with my puppies, because it's totally going to be different with your breed of puppies.
Exactly. Yes. So definitely, I think that we have a lot of combined experience when it comes to sporting bigger breeds, large breeds, but I wouldn't have as much knowledge to offer with these smaller breeds for sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about your puppy clients, because you guys go through an entire process, I think similar to what we do. Of you've got a wait list, and you screen your puppy buyers, and then puppies go home at 7 weeks. They go home at 8 weeks for us. But talk a little bit more about that process, because I think that there's a lot of people out there that enjoy that feel like there's this instant gratification of, I want a puppy and I'm going to get a puppy now.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. So when it comes to our puppy clients, so our reservation list is 1.5 to 2 years out. And keep in mind, we have between 15 to 20 litters a year. So it's not like we're having 4 litters a year with that long, extensive reservation list. It's because we take reservations based on sex and color rather than litter, like sire and dam breedings. A couple of reasons. So when we are breeding, we will only breed our females twice with the option of a third, and we let our client decide if they want to breed their female one more time or not. So when you put a reservation down, I might not even be breeding that pairing anymore. And so I never want to call someone and say, hey, I didn't have enough puppies in the litter for you. So now what do we do? Wait until the next year when we breed them, or what do we do there? When you put down reservation based on sex and color, it truly lets me place you with the correct litter that fits the temperament that you're looking for. So we have litters that range anywhere from these are going to be hunt test puppies. These are going to be, they are going to hunt almost every day of the season, all the way to this is a complete therapy dog. And so obviously, I need to plan accordingly on who I am placing these puppies with. And Josh and I truly try and do the best job with these pairings and making sure that through our year, we are having these these different temperamented litters throughout the year too. So, if I have, say, 150 people on my black male reservation list, I might skip 50 people because that's not the temperament they're looking for. It's my job to make sure that, okay, you're a weekend warrior, but you want a family dog. Great. Bud's going to be your sire. So then I know when I print out my reservation list for the litter that's been born, I'm going to say, okay, you get a puppy from this litter, you get a puppy from this litter. And what we do is you accept a puppy offer. So say we have 3 black males born in the litter, you're accepting a black male puppy offer. You do not know which black male from that litter you're getting until they're 6.5 weeks old. So we totally pinpoint what people are wanting. And so you're like, yep, this is what I want. Okay, well, the 3 black males, they are going to have just these little tiny bit of different personalities. And so, these people want the most dominant, these people want middle of the road, and these people want the more laid back puppy. And so I do the best that I can through all my observations because I'm with them for the full 7 weeks or 6.5 weeks until I say what one you're getting. But I'm then getting down to the nitty gritty of saying, this is who you are getting. And it's interesting because we have so many out of state clients that people are like, this is actually a relief, that I'm not having to worry about getting the last puppy. And I'm like, well, honestly, to me, I'm like, I would want a different puppy than Josh would want a different puppy. He'd want the one that's like independent, go, 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 go.
The hunt test dog that has to hunt.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I want for when Josh is out hunting? How many months of a year? What kind of a dog do I want? That super calm, collected, great family dog. And so, it's really interesting, but a lot of people really like that, that we pick the puppy for them. Now, I will say when people come and visit, I send out weekly emails that people get to see videos of the puppies, and if people are like, wow, I loved Red Collar, then I'll say, okay, you know what, between 6 and 6.5 weeks, let's have a phone call. Let's have a conversation about what we're seeing on that puppy. And if you and I both agree that it's going to be a good fit for you. So, we really pick a litter. We're lucky because our puppies take 85% of our sires' personalities. So we really know what we are giving each of our clients through our sires. But it's super stressful at the same time when I'm like, okay, who's going to get this puppy from this litter? Who's going to get this puppy? But it's interesting how many clients will email me back and say, that's what one we were hoping for. It's actually incredible. So it's a really fun, interesting, different way that we do our puppy placements.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way. And I like a lot about what you guys have put into place for how puppies are picked. That is a very stressful part for us too. So, because we're taking deposits for 2024 as well. And I don't always know which dogs are going to be bred in 2024. I have an idea that these sires are still going to be part of our program. These females are still going to be part of our program. And then upcoming dogs, that we're raising and developing, as long as they're passing health clearances and, proving themselves as family dogs, temperament wise, hunting dogs, they'll also be added. So sometimes new dogs are being added, old dogs are being retired, as well as I want to evaluate the puppies that I get an opportunity to work with from litters from 2022 before I say, yes, absolutely, I'm repeating that breeding. I may want to change things up. So we take kind of like what you're talking about, a very generic wait list where people put down a deposit. Some people have an open preference on male and female at that point. Some people have a strong opinion one way or the other. And then, we have at this point not really been color specific. We've said, if you have a preference, please let us know. But short hair coloration is difficult because not only are there black short hairs and liver short hairs, but then there's the puppies that are very heavily ticked with lots of patches or no patches or very roan. And so people get stuck in their head this picture of a dog and coloration that they want. And we can't program the litters to pop out these puppies that meet exactly what you've pictured in your mind of a color. And like you understand, color isn't everything. The temperament of that puppy, whether it's a black puppy or a liver puppy, is going to be the most deciding factor of what truly is a good fit for you and your family. So we have, I guess, I don't want to say struggled, but it has been a difficult thing to sometimes get across to people is color isn't the number one thing. But I understand having a preference of you want to look at your dog and be like, dang, that's a really good looking dog. And people are always asking me, well, what's your favorite color dog? And I'm like, I think a dog is a good looking dog, whether it's liver or black, or super white or heavily ticked. It's just like their structure and their, personality and their build and all of those things play a role, whether it's black or liver. So people get really hung up on the color thing, but having that opportunity to be like, I'm offering a puppy from this breeding. So what we typically do is people get put on litters at the beginning of the year. So in the beginning of 2024, I planned out my breedings. People will get phone calls and say, okay, these are the litters we've planned. Let's talk about what would be a good fit for you based on what you're looking for. And then I will make recommendations on what they've told me on which litters would be a good option. And I put them on 3 litters because we've usually had really good luck that I can get them a puppy out of one of those 3 litters. If something doesn't work out where a female doesn't take, or she has a small litter, I still have an opportunity to get them a puppy out of a litter that's going to fit what they're looking for. So that's something that we've done. But then the way that we've done it is puppies are picked in order of deposit the day they go home, with, of course, our input, because I've spent the last, 8 weeks with these puppies learning temperaments, personalities, and I'll make recommendations of this puppy in this litter is a little more laid back. And usually within a litter, it's kind of splitting hairs because they're very similar.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes you'll have the more independent puppy that's constantly running off by themselves, or you have the puppy that's constantly at your feet wanting all the attention. So I can make recommendations with that. But I know that there are some people that they wish that they knew which puppy they were going home with ahead of time, as well as I have a lot of clients that say, well, I want pick of the litter. I want the first pick. And I try and stress to them as well that your pick of the litter is probably going to be completely different than someone else's pick of the litter, especially if we're not looking at coloration of those puppies. So I think that as we've moved through, having deposits out till 2024 and things like that, and our deposit process and puppy purchase agreements have, evolved and adapted over the years and changed slightly, that I think that we are always open to, adjusting how we do the puppy picking process. Because the way that you talk about yours sounds complicated enough. And when I add into the fact that I've got people on 3 different litters and then they want to know what pick they are, and I have no idea, because if puppy pick 1 goes with their second choice litter instead of their first choice litter, that moves you up a little bit, so it just gets like this crazy, chaotic game of musical chairs, I think.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So much documentation.
It's really difficult. Yes. I do almost all of my communication through email with my clients, because that way I can at least go back and be like, okay, this is what we talked about. Maybe they went, and people can change at any time on our reservation list. Maybe they put down for their one reservation, non-refundable deposit, they wanted a black male and a yellow male. Now they want to be put on also the yellow female list, because maybe that will bump them up closer, and there's all these different things that can constantly change. And so I do almost all my documentation through email, or if we do a phone call, then I will do a recap of our phone call through an email. So then I can go back and see what we had talked about, because I'm just like, it's my job to remember like 300 and some people's wants and needs in their puppy. How in the world would I remember all of that? And then at the same time, and 2 years in advance. And then at least through the email, they can read it, and then we can both be on the same page, rather than them saying, oh, I thought I said this, or no, I thought you said that, So I'm just like, over communicating to me is a huge deal when it comes down to all of the puppy stuff.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And that's very important when it comes down to really any aspect of running the business that we have, is that communication with our clients in one form or another. Having it all in one place is also really nice, because some people reach out to us on Instagram and I start the puppy conversation there. And then I'm like, where is that message? Because Instagram gets like buried with comments so quickly. So moving things to, email, where everything can be really easy to find, is a great idea, and one that I probably need to implement for myself, because otherwise I'm like, I know I was talking with them. Was it an email? Was it a Facebook message, Instagram message, a text message? It's just, it gets crazy. So like That I'm going to take that from this conversation and implement it for myself, because yes, there are times where I'm like, I swear we talked about this. And if it's even just a recap of the phone call, then I've got it in writing and everyone's on the same page. There's no miscommunication. And that's a really great idea.
Yeah, I mean, people will text me and I'll be like, hey, can you just shoot me an email with this? Because I'm just like, you know, you could have so many text messages in a day and then you completely forget. I don't know about you, but like I will open up a text message and if I do not answer it right away, I am like, done. It's buried.
Yes, because and sometimes it's like I opened it and I'm like, oh, I need to get back to them, but I have to look this up first. And then I try and pin those to the top of my messages.
Yes.
So that at least I'm like, oh gosh, that's the one I need to get back to. Because they don't have an unread feature, unfortunately, whereas at least emails do. So I'm like, I need to glance at this and then I need to get back to it. But if I mark it as unread, at least I'll still, or flag it, I can still get back to it without it slipping through the cracks. And it is a lot to juggle and manage because not only is the puppy side of things important for us, but we've got all the other avenues of content creation, writing articles, podcasts, and it's a lot to organize at times. So the more organized I can be, the better. So I'm going to start trying to implement this in my life. I need organization in my life. So thank you for that.
Oh, it was speed of organization. So I just told Josh the other day, I'm like, my life is such a hot mess and I am just like all over the place. And I told Josh, I'm like, I cannot believe how many clients tell me or like thank me for being so organized. And they have no clue how hot of a mess it is over here. Like it's burning up. And he's like, that's because you prioritize what's most important in your life. He's like, I'm super go with the flow person, but I do not want anyone to ever think I'm unorganized when it comes to something so important like the puppies and running our business and making, I want to make everyone feel like they're important. So I want to make sure that I'm super structured in the business. So when they call me or email me, I can basically pick up right where we left off. And I was like, oh my gosh, Josh, like, thank you so much for making me feel like I at least have some part of my life organized. And it really is basically the most important part because it's, it's our well-being and it's our livelihood. And so oh my gosh, yeah. Outside of business, we're just a hot mess over here.
Oh yeah, and then add 2 kids to the mix, right?
Yes, young kids. Yes. It's like
where they basically are in the stage of needing everything that those puppies do constantly, like diaper change. I'm still in diaper changes. I don't know about you.
We are too with Cole.
Yeah. Diaper changes. And then, obviously feeding them every meal and every snack and baths and bedtime. And there are a lot of times where my kiddos go to bed without a bath that they probably could have used one, but I'm like, I was a dirty little kid when I grew up too, playing in the country and everything. So like, it won't kill them.
I know. I'm like, okay, nowadays, the more germs that they can get into their little system, probably the better.
Yeah, make them more resistant to all of those things out there that they're going to be exposed to at daycare and school and wherever. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to ask you one last question about puppies and then one last question overall. So people ask me, what's your favorite age or stage with the puppies? And I want to know what yours is.
Oh, I love 5 weeks because by then they're weaned from mama. They're starting to gain their little independence. Like they're starting to be able to figure things out, but they're still so innocent. And it's like they start to like hear they start to find their little voices. And my favorite is when I open the door into the puppy room and they're 5 weeks old and I'll be like, good morning. And they hear my voice echo off of the back of the wall. So they all turn to the back of the room and start barking. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, that's adorable.
I'm like, oh, it's so cute. So yeah, I love, love, love 5 weeks. It's such a fun age.
I would say that it's a range for me. It's between 4 and probably 5.5, just under 6 weeks. Because again, like you're saying, their little personalities are starting to just kind of come out. They're playing with each other and being, very uncoordinated at still 4 weeks, usually toppling over each other and things like that. You can pick them up and just snuggle and love them, and they're not turning into these velociraptors and biting you all the time. But by 6 weeks, it's like beware the puppies. You step into the puppy pen and expect to get attacked.
Mm-hmm.
I wear specific clothing when I get into the puppy pen at that age. No shoelaces allowed because they will be untying your shoes immediately. And not that I don't love the puppies at 6 weeks through 8 weeks when they go home, but definitely dealing with them as a pack. I love to see their interactions in that innocent stage, if you will. And then people are like, don't you always miss them when they go home at 8 weeks? And for me, it's bittersweet, for sure. I have been with these puppies for 8 weeks and I love that part of it. But I also know that they're to the point where they need the time, love, and attention that only us, family with one puppy to focus on can give them. So I am happy for them to move on to that family that we've worked with for usually a couple years through this screening process and getting them on the right litter, that I feel like I have this super strong relationship with already. And I know that they're going to be in such a great home for them. So it's not as sad for me at 8 weeks as, some people feel like it should be, I guess.
I know. Well, and probably just like us, like we see so many of our puppies come back for training.
Yes.
So it's like, then we get to see them at 5 weeks, at age 1, at age 2, and then for tune-ups. And so it's not like it just ends, it's like, and you get email updates, text message updates. So it's not just like, all right, peace out, puppy. Like, have a great life. It's like you just create this bond that's unexplainable as a client from someone buying a puppy from us. It's a different vibe, I guess.
I agree. And that's one thing that I recommend to people when they are looking for puppies, whether they're looking to get a short hair from us or another breed, or, some people, even if they don't have exactly the instant gratification, they're just like 2 years, man. We've just lost a dog, 2 years. We need something, to fill that hole in our heart sooner. And I completely understand and do respect that. I mean, we've been in that position where, we lost a dog before we were into this whole training breeding thing. And, I couldn't imagine being without a dog to be part of our family for years, so I understand that for sure. But I always tell people, find a breeder that you can have a relationship with, that you can ask them questions when questions come up, because they will come up, whether that's in the picking puppy process or once the puppy goes home, and find somebody that's not gonna, stop responding to messages if those, conversations get tough. If you're struggling with potty training, I want to be your first resource to help you through that. Not, we've dealt with this potty training issue for 4 months and we're at our wit's end. Well, I'm like, please reach out to me sooner. So definitely that relationship is very important to us as well. So my last question is, if you were recommending, or if somebody was interested in having their first litter, what would be the number one thing, or a couple things, if you have a couple things that you would recommend to them to be prepared?
Oh my gosh. Okay. First and foremost, I would say you need to tell your vet that you are going to be having puppies, have them walk you through everything and make sure they know when your female is about to whelp, so they can be there for any conversation or any guidance or help that you need through that whelping. I am a huge advocate for vets because they are the ones that are going to be able to help you the most. So go through this process with your vet. Go to your YouTube channel because you have so much on there. Do a lot of research, but not too much research, because there's such a wide range of opinions out there on how to whelp out a litter. The other thing I tell people to do is go back to your breeder. If you have open registration with your puppy and you're able to breed them, ours are limited, so our clients can't breed their dogs, but go back to your breeder, have them help you. I'm sure they should be more than happy to help you learn how to prepare and go through this process. Just use your resources and use people over the internet.
Yeah. And that Googling things can get you down a rabbit hole. And also there's a lot of people that do way more at home than we definitely do. You know, if I get to the point with a puppy that I'm needing additional care, I'm going to the vet, like you mentioned. I'm not trying to do veterinary care from home. You know, there's a few things like supplementing, some NutriCal, you know, for energy for those puppies, going to the vet for antibiotics, you know, if I need, but definitely if there's more advanced care needed, the vet is my first resource. So I 100% wholeheartedly agree with you on that. So, well, this was a great conversation, Whitney. It's always good talking with you. I know when we came up and picked up, or when we came up and dropped off Sprig after his training with us, you kind of gave me a tour of where you do your whelping and stuff. And we talked a little bit about puppies at that point in time. And, I wanted to have a conversation at some point in time. And so this was a great opportunity to do that and share, obviously, your vast experience and knowledge on puppies. Even if they're labs, I mean, there's still a lot of similarities to the short hair breeding and whelping. So this is great. I learned a lot. I'm going to implement for myself from an organization standpoint for sure, because having information is great, but having it in too many different places and scattered around just almost adds more difficulty to it, because then I'm spending time looking for those conversations instead of having them all in one organized place that I can reference them when I need to. So I am going to become more organized.
There you go. There you go. Oh my, this is awesome. It's so fun being able to talk to you. And we live very similar lives with two younger kids, and our husbands do a lot of training, and we have so much going on within our businesses that it's just fun for us to be able to sit down without the guys
and the kids
and just talk about, and the kids 100%. And just talk about puppies and doing what we love. So thank you so much for having me on here.
Of course, it was a great conversation. And where can people find you? Because you are a great resource as well with your Instagram channel, because you have a personal Instagram as well as the Riverstone one. And I follow you on both. So.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so you can follow us on Riverstone Kennels. You can follow me on Whitney Miller. I think it's Whitney.Miller, like an underscore or something like that on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can also find our online training program, which is Retriever Roadmap, or riverstonekennels.com. My cell and email and all that's on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being on the show with me today. I hope that everyone that was listening in found this enjoyable, found it informative. That's what we're about, is educating people, helping them be prepared. So if you have a litter upcoming and you have questions, I know that Whitney would be happy to answer them, as well as us. And our YouTube channel, like she mentioned, has a lot of great videos showing the process of whelping litters and how we raise and develop them through that 8-week process. So thank you all for listening. I'm Kat the dog trainer, and I'll see you in the next video.